Hey YouTube, this video is going to show you how to remove the supercharger and supercharger clutch on a 1.8 liter Yamaha supercharged engine. If you ever have problems where you're rolling along and all of a sudden your power just drops down, you're doing 38, 39 miles an hour, and it's just sluggish, it's not planing, you're not getting out of the water, it could be your supercharger clutch that blew up. So if you're on the water and that happens to you and you want to check, if you have a Phillips or a flathead screwdriver, you can undo the clamps to the intake tube. That's right here. That would normally be right here. That goes to your intake box, and you could stick your finger inside there. Of course, while the motor is not running, make sure your lanyard's out, and you spin this. If it only spins one way and it locks up when you push it back counterclockwise, then it's good. But if you can spin it like this freely in both directions, then most likely your clutch is bad. This is a bad clutch right here. You can see that it spins in both directions, which means the clutch inside here is messed up. I didn't pull this one apart yet, but it happens. Depending on how you ride, it happens to me a lot more than most people, but I'm going to show you how to get it out and change it. Alright, the first thing, this motor's out of the ski and most of the stuff is off, but there would normally be an intercooler tube that comes here. It's like a little short black curved tube. You got to get that off. Of course, you got to get your intake tube off. There's just clamps on there. You can get them off with that. You pull them back. Then you got to get this bracket off before you remove the supercharger. These are 14mm bolts, okay? And you got to get them out with a wrench, the open end side of the wrench. This one here, you can actually get it out with a closed side, because once you get back far enough and the bolt loosens up, you'll be able to pull the closed end out. But this one, if you use a ratcheting socket that doesn't have a reverse that you can get to it, and you start ratcheting this out, this bolt will come all the way back to this housing, then your wrench will be stuck on there and you'll be in trouble. So use an open end. It takes a while. If you're going to use a ratcheting, only take it out so far that you can get your ratcheting end out, or have a ratcheting wrench where you have the little switch knob on it where you can switch it back over. But just use this. It's better. Alright, once you get those wheeled out, there's two more bolts that you have to get. There's one that goes in over there, and there's one that goes in up here, and that goes right into your intercooler. So you can wheel those out from the side. You'll be able to get them with a ratchet and an extension, and then you can just wheel those out. But once you get those two bolts out, and then you loosen these up, you can pull this bracket back onto the bolts and then pull it out. Now you have your supercharger. I had already taken the bolts out. There's 3 10mm and there's 3 12mm bolts that hold this on. I had already taken them out, but they have to go back on exactly the same as you took them off, with the same washers and everything. Don't get the configuration messed up, because it is important, and they are torque specific. You gotta torque those down. So once you get all these there's 4 in the front and there's 2 in the back. You can ratchet them out. Once you get them out, the supercharger should lift right off. That's what it looks like inside there. This is an intermediary gear. You can see how it only spins in one direction. So the clutch is down in here behind the oil pump, and the clutch spins this wheel, which in turn spins that gear. And notice there's an O-ring on here. These are reusable. This is the original. On my ski, I got almost 370 hours on it. This Supercharger is actually off my other ski. I just put it on this motor just for the video. When I got this motor, it didn't have one on there. But yeah, make sure this gasket, that you don't ruin this. It's in a little groove, so it's probably best just to put that on the side. You can also check your Supercharger bearing by grabbing with 2 fingers once this is off inside there and try to wiggle this back and forth. If there's any movement in there, if there's any play in there, then you could have a bad bearing, and what you'll notice, it'll shave away on the inside of the housing here. There'll be rubbing, and it'll shave metal off of there and send that through. That's not good. So I'll do another video on that some other time on how to change that bearing. Alright, so now you got this. You got this oil line. This has to come off. There's a 12mm there. There's an 8mm there. And the one on this side, you can either loosen it up or just take it off. There are compression washers on there. I do reuse them, but you can change those if you want. I've reused them a whole bunch of times and they never seem to go bad, so they're kind of like brake caliper crush washers. And if you don't have those on there, you can see there's one on the outside there and then there's one on the inside, so there's 2 on each side, on the top and the bottom. So make sure you save those. Alright, so once that oil line is off, you have these oil pump screws that hold the oil pump to the block. Okay, and these you have to remove. You don't have to remove all this stuff to get the oil pump off. You have to remove these Allen head screws. These are all kind of, I cleaned some of these up because there's a lot of gunk inside there. You can see this one here, it's got a lot of garbage in it. So if you don't want it to strip and you want them to come out, I suggest clean them up. So I believe there's 13 of them. The last one on this side, which would be like if you're sitting on the ski, the driver's side, down below here, this is the last one on the side on the bottom. There's another one underneath here, and there's a sneaky guy inside this hole. He's all the way down in there. I don't know if you could see it, but it's in there. That's got to come out too. So if you get 12 of them out, all these going all the way around, you get all them out, and then you're trying to, it's like a little spot where you can wedge it right here with a little pry bar to get it off. And it doesn't come off, it's because you forgot to get that guy in there. Sneaky. So I'm going to go ahead and clean these off, and then we'll take them off. It's a I'm using a 5mm. Allen head. Alright, so this one on the bottom is, it's being real hard to get out. The Allen wrench doesn't really go in there. I kind of cleaned it off and whatnot, but it looks like it's rotted on the inside a little bit. So you got to be very delicate with trying to get it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try this little scratch awl and see if I can dig all the garbage out of there. And what I had to do on some of the other ones is you got to gently put that in there and find out where it starts to lock in there, and then take your hammer and tap the end of it and just tap it in real nice and easy until you get a good bite on the screw, and then you should be able to just, if you're using these, you can just turn it by hand and pop them loose. They should pop loose. Then you could just wheel them out. But this one here, I'm gonna see if I can get it out, otherwise I'll have to drill it out. If you mess up this one, you're trying to do it in the ski, or any of these on the bottom, it's real hard to get them out while it's in the ski. So this motor's out. Normally I take the motor out when I change a clutch, only because if you strip one of these bolts, or if you break one, or you just can't get it out, you're gonna have to take the motor out anyway. So it's good to keep a couple on hand, especially if you're salt water and your motor looks like this. You know, these have a tendency of rotting out, so have some extra ones on hand. Alright, that one didn't want to come out, and I couldn't find my easy outs. Normally you could drill the center of it out a little bit and use easy outs to get it out, but I was able to get a vice grip on it and I got it loose. So from there I'll be able to wheel it out. All the other ones came out pretty easy. So I'll get this thing out and pull this thing off. Just keep in mind, when you take this off, this is the oil pump. Oil will pour out of here. So always drain the oil out before you remove this from your ski. Otherwise you're going to have oil everywhere. Put a mat down, catch the oil. Okay, I got all the bolts out. Now there's a little place right here where you can get a little pry bar in there, and sometimes you got to kind of tap it a little bit and they'll come out. Sometimes they come out real easy. There is a way, there's a gasket inside there which you can reuse it, but you got to be very careful when you take this off. You want to just kind of crack it, just wedge it out a little bit. And then just kind of look around. Now this one already broke. You can see it broke right there. It hasn't been removed in a while. But what you could do is, when you remove these oil pumps, for the next time, you can put some grease on one side of the gasket, and then when you take the pump off, the gasket will come off on the one side, or at least it won't stick, so that you can, as you're taking it off, you can get a screwdriver or a razor blade in there and just peel it back, peel it back, peel it back, so you can reuse it. If you change your clutch and you don't buy this gasket, you're going to be waiting for a gasket. You're not going to be able to finish the job. So make sure you have the gasket for the oil pump. It's like a weird, goes all the way around the outside of here. You know, covers all these. There's like all these different little holes in it. Also, when you get the pump off, inspect these guys down here. Make sure when you put your pump back on that this will slide over that. Make sure and this will slide over the other one on the other side. Make sure that these gaskets don't fold back in or pinch when you're putting that back on. You just wrap some grease around there, or make sure it's oiled real good. Make sure these gaskets haven't been pinched, because if you put that back on, you put this all back together, get it back in your ski, put oil in it, fire it up, you get oil in your hull, it'll squirt oil out of here, and then you'll have to pull it out and do it all over again. So next step, you have your intermediary gear here. The way you get that out is you just kind of slide this thing back and forth a little bit, and usually it'll come right out. There's a little hole in there. You can kind of stick a screwdriver or a scratch hole in there and just pull it out enough where you can grab it. That's the shaft. It's got these little holes in it where the oil can flow through there, and it's hollow so the oil can get through. And then the intermediary gear will lift right out of the top. Now inside here is a little sleeve. You can leave it in there or push it out. It's got a flange on this side, so it only comes out one way, but that will have to be back in there when you put this all back together. So there's your clutch in there. This is a good clutch. This is what it looks like out. You're going to need one of these tools. Okay, this goes in through here. It's a little tricky sometimes getting it on there, getting it to. The tolerances are it's very tight. There we go. So that gets on there. Now there's a bolt in the middle there. I believe that's 17 millimeter. Grab that. All right. It's a 17 millimeter bolt. Now this is reversed. The threads on this bolt are reversed. So generally, a lot of people know it as righty tighty, lefty loosey. This is the opposite. So to get it off, you got to do it as if you're tightening it. So normally you would think that this would be tightening the bolt, but it's actually loosening this. You may need some kind of pipe or whatnot. It's on there pretty good. That's it. Take your locking tool off and it should slide right out. Now just by looking at the bad one and the good one, you can't really tell the difference, but when you turn it, see how nice that spins that way, and then you can't turn it back the other way? This one here, you can turn it in both directions. So all the teeth are good on this. Make sure when you buy a new one of these, make sure you get the updated one. There's more teeth on it, and if you're going to replace it, if you have an older one like an 08, 09, 010 that has low hours and you never replace this, you're going to have to replace this with the updated version, because if you replace this clutch and do not replace the intermediary gear, you'll grind the teeth out. It won't work. So you got to get this and this if you're upgrading. If you have an SVHO or one of the newer ones, they automatically come with these. So here's your intermediary gear. Everything looks good. The teeth look good. So basically what this does is the one gear turns the other gear, and then that turns that gear in there. So I have a I have a clutch that I'm changing. If you can see down in there, I ripped all the teeth apart. The clutch, all the teeth are missing down in there. I don't know if you could see it, but I blew all the teeth off. I don't know how I did it. Never seen that before. I have cracked housings. The clutch housings, I have cracked these. Were cracked. I had a crack go right across here. I've had that happen. And I've had just a ton of them that just spin in both directions, but I've never had one like I just showed you, where the teeth and everything blew apart. I'm thinking something maybe inside that motor that broke off and messed it up. But there's your timing chain, your crankshaft. It's the end of the crank right there. Your timing chain goes up. So putting it back on, it's just the opposite. I don't have the torque specs in front of me right now, but that 17mm bolt that holds it on there is torque specific. So when you put it back on, you got to make sure you have a torque wrench that does foot-pounds, and you got to make sure you have that on the right way, because if that loosens up while you're out there, you're going to have big problems. Hope the video helps. I will be making another video on how to pull the motor out of a ski, so stay tuned and please subscribe. Thanks.